Okay, today is lesson 108, and today's lesson we're going to talk about some formulas for area and perimeter, and then we're also going to learn about the distributive property. Okay, so in your book, go to page 681 and pause the video if you need to open up your book right now. But on page 681, there's a chart, and I'll put it up here. The chart has the common formulas that we're going to use, okay? So it goes over what the areas of a rectangle are, the perimeter of a rectangle, area of a square, and the perimeter of a square. Now, if you notice, when you're using a formula, you'll actually have letters to represent numbers. So you're going to plug things in for those letters. So in these formulas that we're going to use, you're going to see the letter A being used. Now, letter A means area. Okay. If you see a letter S, that's going to stand for the side length. And then if you see a P, that's what perimeter stands for. All right, everyone. So let's look at example 1. Example 1 shows a blueprint of a one-story house. So I have that drawn here. It's also in your book. And letter A wants us to know what the perimeter of the house is. We know that the perimeter is just what the length is all the way around the house. So in this case, because we have an odd shape here, it's actually two rectangles. If you drew this blue line in here, okay, this could be two separate rectangles. So in this case, because we know perimeter just is the length all the way around, we can just add up all the sides, even though the shape is different. So I am going to start by, I'm just going to work from the top and go down. So we've got 20 feet along this length, okay, plus we've got 10 feet here. Then we've got 20 feet again. And then going down, we've got 30. And then going across on the bottom, we have 40. And then this long length all the way from the top to the bottom is 40 again. So if I add all of those lengths up, okay, the ones place we have a 0, and then we should get 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So 160. And then our label would be feet. Okay, now letter B, for example 1, we need to figure out what the area of this house is. So like before, remember I drew this line here to represent that there are actually two rectangles here. So we need to find the total area for this small rectangle, and then we need to find the area for this big rectangle. Okay, so once you find those two areas, then you can add them up to find out what the total area is. So let's first start with the small. Okay, we'll start with this small rectangle. Okay, I'm just going to write that here, small rectangle, so you know what we're solving here. Okay, so I wrote down the formula, which is on the page before, or it's on page 681. Okay, so the formula for a rectangle, area equals LW. Remember, if you have two numbers right next to each other, or two variables right next to each other, that means that you're multiplying them. If they don't include the add or subtracting sign or division sign, then you're multiplying them. So this means that we're doing length times the width. Okay, so the length here, okay, we've got 20 feet. So we're going to take 20 feet times, the width is 10 feet here, so times 10 feet. So when we take 20 times 10, These are multiples of 10, so you can cover up those zeros and just take 2 times 1, which is 2. And since they were both had a 0 in the ones place, okay, we have 2 zeros then. Okay, and then since we're doing area, we're going to have feet squared. 200 feet squared. Now that's the small rectangle. Okay, now I'm going to erase this quick so I can have more room, and we're going to do the big rectangle now. So the big rectangle, we're still going to use the same formula of area equals length times width. Now we need to figure out what the length is here. So all the way across this rectangle, that length is 40 feet. So we're going to take 40 feet and then we're going to figure out what the width is. So how wide is it? It is 30 feet wide. Don't be confused by this one, okay? This length of 40 is all the way from the top to the bottom of this shape. We need to use this one because it starts here and ends here, and that's what our width is for this shape. Okay, same thing as before, cover up those zeros. So then we're just taking 4 times 3, which is 12. Then we add those 2 zeros on because these were multiples of 10. And then our unit is feet squared. 1,200 feet squared. So we're not done yet. Okay. We found the total, or we found the areas for the individual shapes inside of this house. Now, because we need to find that total area of the house, we need to add up whatever this area was and whatever this area was. So if we take 1,200 square feet and we add that small rectangle of 200 feet, we are going to get 1,400 square feet. And I wrote it this way this time. Okay. All right, so this next thing I'm going to talk about is called the distributive property. Now, the distributive property hasn't been something we've talked about yet, so this is brand new, so pay attention here, okay? This is really cool, I think. So, if you go back to the formulas on page 681, they give you 2 formulas for perimeter of a rectangle. So, the first one they give you is that P equals 2, and then in parentheses, L plus W, okay? And then the next example they give is P equals 2L plus 2W. So you're probably wondering why. Why are there 2 ways to solve this? Okay, and I'm going to show you first. So I'm going to first show you how they got to from this to this, okay? And then I'll explain how they both work. So you know that if we're taking something with parentheses in our formula, we always do that parentheses first, right? So whatever the length is and the width is, you solve that first, and then you multiply them both by 2. So if you heard what I just said, you take everything that you added here and you multiply those both by 2. So I'm going to actually just show you with arrows what we can multiply by. So if I take this 2 times my length, okay, that's where this 2L comes from because I multiplied 2 times L. Okay, and before we said that whatever we do in our parentheses first, you're going to add them up, but you're still going to multiply it by 2 at the end. Okay, so in this case, you can just distribute this 2 right away times the length. 2L, okay? And the same goes for the W. You know you're eventually going to multiply it by 2. So let's just do it right now. We can take this 2 times the W, and we get 2w down here. Okay, we still need to add it though. That's how they get from this formula to this formula. Now let me prove that they both work, okay? I'm going to erase the second formula where we use the distributive property. So if I gave you a rectangle, and let's give some easy numbers. Let's have, like we did, 2 by 4. Okay. Oops, hit my face there. Okay, so let's find the perimeter here with this formula. So if I plug in, okay, P stands for perimeter, equals 2, and then I need parentheses. What's my length? My length is 4. And then I need to add, and then I need to put in my width. My width is 2. And then I need to close those parentheses. And we always solve whatever's in the parentheses first, okay? So I like to rewrite everything. Keep it nice and neat. 2, and then what's in your parentheses? 4 plus 2 is 6. So now we're left with that P equals 2 times 6. 2 times 6 is 12. So my perimeter using this formula is 12. Now let's see if we get 12 using the formula where we did the distributive property. So P equals 2L plus 2W. Okay, let's use the same 2 by 4. So if I plug this in, we've got P equals 2 times, what's my length? 4, plus 2 times my width, which is 2. Okay, I'm going to solve my multiplication first before I add. 2 times 4 is 8. Don't add yet. We need to solve this multiplication first. 2 times 2 is 4. Now I can add at the very end. 8 plus 4 is 12. They both worked. All right, example 2, last one before you can start your lesson practice. We need to use the distributive property to multiply. So we have the problem 4, and then in parentheses we have 20 plus 3. So this is just the same as actually 4 times 23 because 20 plus 3 is 23. So I'll write that for you. This is the same problem here, but we just broke it apart to show that you can use the distributive property to solve problems too, or to be able to multiply. So we are going to distribute this 4. Okay, so we can do 4 times 20 first. Then we can add, and then we're going to distribute this 4 to the 3. Okay. Now, we multiply first before we can add. 4 times 20, cover up that 0, so that we're just taking 4 times 2. That gives us 8, add that 0 on. So 4 times 20 is 80. We add whatever 4 times 3 is, which is 12. 80 plus 12 is 92.